enjoy the energetic feeling of something new, and nothing compares to the feeling writers get when their latest work drops. How much work actually goes into making that single day special? Have release strategies evolved with writers? Or is it a calculated formula that's never changed? We'll sit down with a round table of panelists to discuss just that, the evolution of release strategies. Then, for this week's Indie Connection, C.L. Cannon brings us another great group of books. All of these indie books are similar to Bonesmith by Nikki Palpreto. Finally, get ready for some fun as we enter into another round of the 5-minute drill. Grab a coffee, get comfortable, and hit the like button. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't. Here's your host on another episode of This Week in Indies, Madeline Dale. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another fantastic episode here with us on This Week in Indies. We have a lot planned for today's group chat. Before I bring everybody in, though, I do want to mention that if you're watching on Facebook, to send a star to let us know how much you appreciate us here and all that we do. Every time you contribute, you get entered into our season prize package drawing with gift cards, swag, and more. And the package is always chock full of amazing good stuff. So make sure you chat, send stars, like, share off YouTube, like and subscribe. Yes. But enough about that. Let's bring in all these beautiful creatives. Look at them all. So guys, we're going to go around the table and let everybody introduce themselves. And we are going to kind of start in reverse. So we're going to start down here with one of our newer people on the show. So go ahead and tell everybody a little bit about you, what you write, who you are.
Sure, yeah. Hi, my name is Sarah Tasz. I write as SG Tasz, as you can see that way. And I write paranormal comedy and paranormal suspense. I have one series of novellas, an 8-book series that is completed. It's called Dead Mall. It's more YA paranormal comedy. And then I actually just released a book almost 2 weeks ago now called Death by Misadventure, which is a more paranormal suspense novel. So, and first in a series as well.
Nice. Next, we're going to Mr. Mike.
Hi, I'm Mike Jack Stoumbos. This is Lutra the Parrot. Yes, this is a real parrot. This is not a graphic or, I don't know, some kind of filter thing going on. And I am the editor of Wonderbird Press. We do anthology, science fiction, fantasy, a little bit of horror, usually with a healthy dose of humor. And I also write the This Fine Crew series with Chris Kennedy Publishing and in the Four Horsemen universe as well. Yeah. And I currently have a Kickstarter up. I should probably mention that. Got a Kickstarter up for Wonderbird Press's next 2 anthologies, Murder Bugs and the Vampire Survival Guide.
Yeah. AJ.
Hi, I'm AJ Mullican. I write paranormal romance, contemporary sci-fi romance, lots of different romances, and some horror and suspense and thriller mixed in as well. And
Sweet.
Hi, I'm David Green. I write epic fantasy and urban fantasy, but what I really wanted to talk about was this one of Joe Crampton's favourite books, which is The Finding Numenor. As we all know, massive fan of J.R.R. Tolkien, and I just wanted to remind everyone of that and to please ask him everything about Tolkien whenever you can.
He does love some Tolkien quotes, guys.
He loves it too much, I think.
Yes. So for you guys watching, as you can tell, these guys have all put out a ton of books. They've been through the release process tons of times. So we're going to break it down, and I want to ask you guys, what was it like planning your first release strategy? And you guys can just jump in whenever. I know some of you are probably like, man, I got to really think back to that.
No, my first one, I had no idea what any of this was. And so I just released it on Amazon. It was a supernatural thriller. I just happened to release it right around Halloween. Coincidentally, that's when I finished it. I had no idea what a release strategy was. I just wanted to get my book out there.
If I can kind of go off of that, I was very similar as well. I sort of knew what went into a release, but not really. So I also just kind of put my book out there, and I knew I was doing it kind of wrong or too fast, but I just wanted something out there to be able to start promoting and playing with. And I think the only thing that I really did as far as any kind of strategy was before I even knew the term rapid release, I released a book in January, and then I released books 2 and 3 at the same time in March, because I'd heard that having minimum 3 books in a series was better for read through and for like people picking up the first one. And that was pretty much the entirety of my first strategy.
A first book is really hard. Like, if you first ever release, like I'd done quite a lot of anthology stuff before I released my first book. So I had some people that kind of would have read my stuff before, but even still, like, you kind of, and especially when you're writing fantasy and epic fantasy in particular, a lot of fantasy readers like to know that the series is complete before they start reading it, or it's going to be. So when you kind of release that first one, and even until you finish that series, you're kind of asking people to take a chance on, like, someone they've never really heard of, and also, like, a promise that, yeah, this will be finished, it'll be worth reading the entire series, and there'll be a full thing to go. So that first book, when you're coming out as like an unknown, and you don't have all that kind of thing behind you, like it can be tough, and it can be kind of a kind of situation. Once the kind of thrill of like having something released kind of wears off, and you kind of see the reality of it, it can be a little bit kind of chasing as well. But like, I think especially with indies, like as everyone said so far, like the rapid release schedule, I didn't know about that at the time either. And I made the mistake of leaving it a year between the first and second book, which is more like a traditional kind of release schedule, I suppose. So that was kind of like when the second one came out, it was kind of like starting all over again in a way. But you learn a lot of things from it as well, and I think that's what the first book should always be looked at, is the learning experience behind it.
Yeah. I'll jump in and note that I think I may have done things a little bit out of order compared to a lot of folks. So my first release, something that I'd written, was actually when I was writing for stage. So the first stage play that I wrote and co-produced was back in 2007, and this was after I had acted and done different kinds of crew and tech things in other productions, but I didn't know anything about actually producing my own. And so I was like, all right, how do we handle all of the setup for the actual play itself? How do we just make sure that we're not going to burn the theater down, essentially? And then we're like, cool, we're going to go for opening night and hope that people show up. And luckily, the cast is involved enough in the community that it kind of just worked. This didn't carry forward in the next however many productions. But then when I published my first novel, this was before I'm a teacher. Before I started my master's in teaching, I was like, I need to have published a novel, because I didn't like how many English teachers I worked with who had never published anything. So I'm like, I'm going to do this to have done it. So it was a checklist thing. So back in 2012, I did a Kickstarter, a time when nobody in my community knew what Kickstarter was. And then at the launch day, we basically did like an opening night release party sort of thing in person in Seattle with a lot of the overlapping community from the theater beforehand. And it did well locally in terms of like, cool, we got it into a couple of different bookstores in the Seattle area, and then I started my master's degree and like stopped advertising it, and sales immediately screeched down to zero and startled the bird. So I didn't actually get back into the whole release strategy thing until years later, when I was starting to phase further and further out of teaching and more into the writing and publishing world again. At which point I was kind of letting my publisher handle it and learning from him.
Nice. I have to say mine is very similar to you guys, because I just like put it out there, no plan either, and it just kind of, it's definitely a learning process. So since that first process happened, what do you feel has been one of the biggest things that you've taken away from that first release that you now do differently?
Probably actually planning my releases. Getting the cover ahead of time, getting a pre-order set up, posting about the pre-order in groups on Facebook or on my website. A lot of that stuff I had no clue about when I started, and I was 8 years ago almost, so it's definitely a big difference.
Yeah, my first response is did everything differently this most recent time. My first book, for the record, was early 2019, so it hasn't been quite as long as previously mentioned. But yeah, it was. I think the two things that I really took away was don't be shy to share it with everybody and ask for help. Like this is marketing, this is promotion. You can't just hide it, or no one will ever see it. You have to be comfortable with like getting it out there. And then the other one was giving myself enough time between writing and publishing to do outreach to strangers, which was absolutely terrifying. And then also, yeah, getting the cover out there and knowing which genre I was writing in also really helped a lot.
Yeah, I kind of just got into mine from after the first one that, like, especially as kind of a newer author, it was like you kind of just have to just look at the long term kind of thing, and just the end goal is to kind of get that series, whatever series is you're working on, complete. Especially if you are working on a series, standalones, it's slightly different. But that was the thing. It was kind of like, well, don't pin all your hopes on that first one, and don't think maybe the second one, it might be if it's a little bit better than if it's there's a growth from the first one, then great. But don't get too disheartened if it isn't, because that long term thing is the final kind of like series, because that's when you can really start to look at advertising these things and looking at kind of like tiered pricing models. And you can, if you're with Kindle, you can do Kindle Unlimited, where you have a complete series. It's much easier to kind of market, and even if it's wide, it still is. So it's one of those things. But it was also bearing in mind not to rush it as well, because there is obviously that the rapid release does work, and there's been proof that it works, but you still want to have that quality as well. I, after writing 2 almost 300,000 word books in a year this year to get them both out for release dates, I was like, well, maybe I'll go a little bit slower in the future, because that was quite a tough schedule that I set myself. But my last in the series just came out last weekend, and it's done. Everything that I've kind of learned over the run of this series since it started being published, I kind of put into practice with that one, and it I think it kind of paid off. It was the most successful one that I've done so far, and there was only a few months of space between books 3 and 4, which literally put me in hospital at one point because I was working on it so hard. So I don't recommend doing that. But yeah, it was one of those things of just taking that long-term plan and just saying, okay, well, don't get too disheartened and don't get too wrapped up in like, book 2 has to do this and book 3 has to do this. Just take that kind of long-term view and looking at the series as a whole, and putting in plans and picking up people where you can and picking up readers where you can, and growing your kind of like your name as a writer. But it does become a lot easier and more, you have more tools at your disposal when you do have a completed series.
Yeah. Well, so I didn't really get back in. So as an author in some form, I didn't really get back into trying to launch and promote stuff until realistically, like the last 18 months, give take. So the first 3 This Fine Crew books were released right at the beginning of 2022, rapid release, and that was like that was my first foray back into novel writing and publishing. After the first one, that was just a more of a checklist item. And luckily, this was something where I was working with a team. I was working with an indie press, Chris Kennedy Publishing, and it's not. I've been told it's not quite the same animal as like send it off to a big publisher and they handle whatever amount they do handle, and reports seem to vary. But it was a good team to work with, and they had a release strategy model based on having sort of a launch team of pre-readers who were going to be reading it in advance, also helping with some of like the proofreading and continuity notes, especially for series. And then on release day, with genuine reviews, if they liked it, on release day, posting a 5-star review with some commentary. And we know the Zon algorithm has some attrition to it. Things that get posted do get taken down. So if you're planning on trying to get let's say 25 ratings and reviews in the first few days, then okay, you might need like 50 people who have already read it, who have already pledged a review and have already written one to post it, and then expect half of those to disappear. And that was very helpful. That was one of those things that was like, cool, I can learn from this process. And so when I started publishing anthologies that I was editing and like myself publishing through Wonderbird Press, that was something that I really tried to do with that. I tried to figure out ways to get people in the community who liked things that I'd written and edited previously to read it. Like, give it to them as free and helpful as possible, and be like, please read this, and if you like it, post a review. If you don't like it, I guess it's up to you whether or not you post a review. But the hope is if you enjoy it, you post a positive review. And I got a lot of comments when Murder Birds, the first of the Unhelpful Encyclopedias, came out. A lot of people were like, hey, love the thing. I tried to post a review. Amazon's not letting it show up. I'm like, that's life. We're not going to stress about that. As many people as we can have doing this as possible. Yay. Let's go with that. And then along with that, I found that I still really enjoyed some of the things that I would usually put in the in-person engagement category. So being able to host like launch events, granted they're over Zoom, but hosting launch events where, you can leverage we're going to read a passage with whatever kind of voices we can get in those ones. I do concept art for my stories, so usually on the release days, I am able to share some kind of concept art with the people who are super fans. And in some cases, with this fine crew, there are super fans who request specific things, and I get to draw those things for them and then show them on the release day. And that has continued into the anthology. So Murder Birds and Murder Bugs are both fully illustrated, and so being able to kind of tailor that to what I know the go-to readers are looking for has been really nice. And so it creates a moment of engagement and a moment of value add beyond just, here, trust this unknown person with an unknown book.
I like that. And we've got some people hanging out in the chat with us this morning, Anita and Jessica, which you guys in the chat, I would love to hear y'all's first time release day strategy stories. That would be amazing. And maybe we can all take tips from that too. Because something I've noticed is everybody's has been different. And I know we kind of all have similar genres, but not so similar. So starting from the beginning of your journey to now, do you feel like release strategies have changed for all authors across the board?
It really just depends on who it is, really, isn't it? Like, you've got like it depends where you are in your journey. Like, you have people in the indie sphere, for example. You have someone like Will White who can just release a book at full price, and thousands and thousands of people will buy it because he's well established and he's got a big fan base, and he doesn't need to do anything fancy with trying to entice people. And it's just like, here's my new book, it's $6.99 or whatever, and people will happily get it because he is like, he has got that recognition and that fan base. I feel like people are a little bit kind of like earlier on in the journey, like, it's kind of, it's in a shame in a kind of way, but I do feel like the best way that kind of works is the tiered pricing approach when you do have like a new release out or something, and that is where you do have something where you're basically giving away the first book in the series or doing it for $1 or whatever it is, just to kind of get people in. And then the next book will be $1 more and $1 more and $1 more. And I've done that the last 2 times with my last two releases, and each time it's done better. Like this time, because there was a completed series, it did even better than it did before. Hopefully one day it'll get to the point where we don't need to do that, where we can just we don't have to discount our stuff so much to basically you're selling a series for the price of a cup of coffee, basically, but that is just because of where you are in your journey, and just like how well known you are and how many fans you have, and it's like that that will change depending on a lot of different things. You have people like Travis Balgi that came in with Legends and Latte when it was an indie release. He was able to kind of go at full price straight away, but he did have an inbuilt fan base already from all of the audiobook narrating that he was doing for Will White and for other people, and he had he made video games that were indie video games that were very, very popular. And he had connections and everything like that, and he was able to come in and make a big splash, which isn't the case for most indie and self-published authors. It just really just depends, and I think as well, like your genre does dictate a little bit about how you're going to release books as well. With me, when I'm like the way I'd approach my urban fantasy releases to my epic fantasy ones will be quite different, because it's a slightly different fan base. And Mike was talking about reviews and stuff just before, and my urban fantasy books are around 80,000 words, but my epic fantasy ones are quite a bit bigger than that, like 4 times bigger in some instances. So there is a different kind of thing where it's like everything has to be ready in a different kind of date, and there's going to be a different kind of pricing model, and there's going to be a different type of reader. So all these kind of come into all of it comes into it, and yeah, it really just depends on if you have that inbuilt, if you have an inbuilt fan base or an inbuilt readership, then you've got it's going to work really very well for you. You don't have to think about all these different techniques and different ways that you can do things.
Yeah,
I think social media has helped indie authors as far as releasing goes. I think it definitely makes it easier for some authors, especially if you're the type who has like the extroverted personality and can connect with people very easily. I've seen people who have, they're in their first year authoring and have amazing sales and amazing releases because they just have that personality that draws people in. And the media helps them portray that personality better than they may have if they had been releasing solo in an indie book like 10, 15 years ago.
I mean, so I would also agree that like it's changed, and I think social media is going to be a big part of that. One thing that I've been seeing a lot when I'm talking to authors in different genres and like their different release strategies, I hear a lot of comments that are sort of trying to follow the trend that they thought worked really well the year before. So there definitely seems to be some amount of like trend chasing, and with a lot of the trend chasing arcs, eventually it's a point of diminishing returns. I'm not going to use the word saturation as if it's totally done, we can't get into it anymore, but like Kickstarter is definitely a model where people who didn't think Kickstarter was super viable for indie authors before saw the Brandon Sanderson example, and some of them were like, oh, it's more viable than ever, and some people were like, oh, that market's saturated, we can't do it anymore. But either way, over the last couple of years, the number of indie releases that I've seen use Kickstarter has exploded, and along with that, some of the difficulty of being discovered amongst the rest of the people who are launching those things has also popped up. Fortunately, the one that we currently have going is working well. But I know a lot of people who have put out Kickstarters for novels in the last 6 months, and they feel like they're having a hard time getting discovered. And so so one of the things that does shift frequently is if people see that something works and they try to rush into it, they might find that their style doesn't work as well, or their product doesn't work as well for that, or that there just aren't enough like eyeballs among the readers who are looking for that exact thing at that exact moment. So some of the authors that I know who have had really strong opening releases, I'm going to say without necessarily having a huge fan base in advance, are in the game lit side. So Game lit RPG, folks who just have like these huge releases, and that is a market that I have also got a lot of people starting to flock towards. And I'm not sure if there's anyone that can predict like when you'll hit a point of diminishing returns on chasing that trend, chasing that genre. But at the moment, it still seems to be growing, where there are a lot of people who are like, this is a way to get a start. If you can like crank out a few 100,000-word game-lit novels, then that community of readership they are hungry for more. They want to keep clicking on more, reading through more, posting their reviews, and they're super vocal about sharing it with their community. So that's kind of a nice one to leverage without having to do all of the tips and tricks that some other authors and other genres might have to do. Oversimplifying, but that's a thought.
Yeah, no, that's actually kind of a good point that you bring up about the trending stuff, like the trend setting stuff. And do you feel like there's a lot of people that actually do their research behind going towards those bags?
I'm sure there's some people who really do. And I would go with this as the mileage will vary kind of commentary. I think there are some people who do a ton of research, and there's one particular anecdote in mind where I know somebody who did a ton of research on something for years and then tried to follow what they thought they were researching, and the trend had shifted by the time they got going, and it was very frustrating for them. So I think that happens too, and I think there are some people who are just like, I heard this one thing this one time, decided to try it, and it worked. And then there are a lot of people that we don't hear about who heard this thing this one time, decided to try it, and it didn't work. So.
Yeah, I think it's like, oh, sorry, go.
Oh, I was just going to say that, like, I understand that frustration about trend chasing. I'm not much of a trend chaser, but it feels like every time I consider going after something that sounds interesting, it's already like full of people. And I just am like, all right, I missed that one. I guess I'll catch the next one.
I feel that.
Yeah, it's right into market. That's like, that's the thing, isn't it? And I mean, you saw it with Legends and Lattes when that came out, and then there was so many different. A couple of months afterwards, there was lots of cozy fantasy books, especially in the indie sphere, that followed, and and it's in the trad sphere now as well. Whereas and then there's this like kind of thing where people are kind of relaunching stuff that they once released and said this is actually cozy fantasy as well. Like, it came out a while ago, but like people weren't really interested in it at the time. And it's like, it's one of those things, like when people do write to market, you have to be really, really quick about it, because you never know how long that interest is going to be around for, and what is going to be the next thing that comes along. And some people are excellent at being able to kind of see what the next thing is going to be. But I don't know if that's ever really for me, because like I obviously, like we were talking off air before, like I do a bit of ghostwriting, so I genuinely sometimes would write stuff that isn't what I'm kind of passionate about, because it's just a job and everything, and I kind of think that writing to market would be the same kind of thing, whereas like I do like to write the things that I'm really, really interested in, and maybe one day they will be the things that are like super trendy one day, and I'll be like, well, look at all these ones that I have. Yeah, it's just one of those things, isn't it? And you just have to I think it can be a dangerous game if you do just do write to market quite a lot, because you end up having a very fractured kind of bibliography, and it's and that can be a little bit dangerous as well, I think.
Definitely. I have written probably one book that was intentionally written to market, which was a monster romance. And that did well enough, but I don't write fast enough to write to market. Right now, hockey romance is the big thing, and I know nothing about hockey. I would have, by the time I learned enough about it to write a convincing romance about it, it'd be gone. So there's no point. So I just write what I enjoy.
You said what kind of romance was in?
Hockey.
Like hockey, like the sport?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, that's funny. Okay.
Nice.
What's for the Golden Knights?
Yeah.
I'm coming. I'm from Vegas, so yeah.
I played hockey. Both my parents are from Michigan. Like, we were ice folks. Yeah.
So with the release planning strategy, do you guys consider the trends, like personally, when planning your releases?
You kind of want to you want to kind of tap into some stuff. So, what's a very kind of popular thing at the moment is like that graphic where you have like the book and it has all the lines coming off it, and it has like, like a little kind of like, I'm trying to think. I did one for my last one, but someone did it for me. Actually, I didn't do it myself, but it was like had like a little line saying like if Tolkien and Brandon Sanderson wrote a book together, and like like diverse characters. You know what I mean? It has all these kind of little things coming off them, and they're like they're really really popular at the moment because they're really easy to digest, and it kind of gets a few things. But what you can also do with those is that you can adapt them to what is kind of buzzy and trendy and popular. So if there is like or it's something that you really want to kind of get out in front of what your book is about. So if you've got like neurodivergent characters in it, like which my books do have, you could just have that as a thing, and it's people can see it straight away, and it kind of it might be something that stands out. But if you are someone that does want to go to like to put out the kind of tropes that are very very trendy, it's a very easy thing to do. And a lot of people do it, and it's a really it's a really good one to kind of get out there on especially on the first week of your release, I think. Yes,
AJ shared that in the chat, and I was like, "Yeah, this is it." So I could see the tropes, the enemies to lovers, and spread around it. So yeah, that's definitely
a trend I jumped on for this last release.
Yeah, I did too. And Anita says, "I'm happy to educate anyone on hockey." The trope promo.
Well, she's Canadian, isn't she? So like the queen of hockey.
She probably is. You guys she's got all the cold, icy snow stuff. So
not as much in Arizona. So not as much of the ice and hockey weather.
Yeah. But like with the trend stuff like that, Mike, go ahead and pick back up there.
So one of the things that I attempted to do was in some ways going the opposite of what I was seeing in a lot of trends in the anthology world. Well, here I will hold up the Murder Birds. So this is the cover of Murder Birds. We went for like this, old leather, like with gold inlay kind of facade thing, and we call it the Unhelpful Encyclopedia series. And it was one of those things where I love short stories. I've been in a lot of anthologies. I've slushed for several anthos as well, and I talked to a lot of writers who are mainly doing short story work, which also is pretty common among teachers because that's what they have time for. And one of the things that people kept talking about is they wanted more things that felt like they could have humorous endings, that it wasn't just the kind of short story that by the end you feel like you need to shower your soul. And so things that could be a little bit upbeat, could be a little bit funny, and then along with that, being able to play into the Unhelpful Encyclopedia, which is weird. It's a compendium of stories about birds and intent to kill. That's Murder Birds, and we're doing the same thing with Murder Bugs. Compendium of stories about bugs and intent to kill with sci-fi and fantasy twists on them. And this was like, it's not totally different. It's not reinventing the wheel, but it was like, let's try something that's not what we're seeing in the common trend. Let's try something that doesn't look like the usual, I'm going to say, kind of quick CG cover that I've been seeing on a lot of the anthos lately. And so let's try to do something that looks like the old works of Edgar Allan Poe, but with a cheesy bloody feather on top of it. Cool. And kinds of people who really like it, like they very much gush over the cover, and that's what drew them in, because it looks different enough from a lot of the other things that they're seeing. So when I'm hand selling at conventions, Murder Birds will draw people in from across the room, and having like prints from, so it's illustrated, having prints from Murder Birds just displayed there. Some people will see the print of the owl skeleton, and like they'll come over and look at the owl skeleton, and then they'll get them talking about the book, and they'll buy the book. So sometimes chasing the opposite of a trend or trying to forge your own path can be a fun way to go. And then some of them, some things will totally flop. There's some things you'll try where you try to carve a new path, and it's not the path people want to follow you on yet. So there's that too.
I kind of work along those lines myself, kind of like to forge your own path creatively. Like it's more fun that way. And also when people get tired of seeing the stuff that's been used by everybody, there you are. They're like, oh, hey, this is different. This is where I'm going to come check out this stuff over here. So
it's definitely a delicate balance too, because you gotta follow, like, not necessarily riding the trend, but follow the trends in cover design and in marketing, like the trope promo and stuff. But you also gotta think it's gotta be different enough to attract people, but enough of what they're looking for to attract them in that way as well. So it's kind of a balancing act.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I would also say that timing of your release matters too. Like I have Paranormal Suspense came out in September versus Paranormal Comedy that came out in January last time. Like the timing has definitely helped the performance of book one. When book 2 and 3 are just on pre-order right now. It's not I can't do a closed series. So yeah, that matters too.
Yeah. Nice. So the timing, the cover, and everything, do you guys feel like you go about that process differently now that you have some knowledge of what you need to plan?
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I learned recently that if you're looking to get like orange tags on Amazon, that it's best to launch in the middle of the month, which I didn't know until this last book actually, and it worked. So I was like, oh, it must be right, because apparently it's because like a lot of trad books release at the start of the month, and obviously with how Amazon do their like new releases, it's on a 4-week cycle. So you kind of have those first 2 weeks of the month where like, you know, these bigger new releases come out and then they kind of start tapering off a little bit. But also as well, it's if you are looking to get that visibility as like a bestseller and a hot new release, you really kind of have to look at when like books are coming out. So if you're launching like a horror book and Stephen King is in the same couple of weeks, then and you're in the same categories that Stephen King is in, then it's only going to go one way, right? And it's the same as in fantasy. If you've got Brandon Sanderson bringing out a book in around the same time frame as you have, so it's kind of one of those things where it's like, you know, you can really kind of look into this and plan it and kind of like even ride the wave of it a little bit as well, because like if there is like a big new release in your kind of genre, it's good to kind of time it just a little bit afterwards, because then, you know, and if you're in those residual sales from this other book will kind of be carrying that category that you're in. So there's lots of it's a pity that CL Cannon isn't on this one, because like she's great at this kind of stuff, and I learned a lot from her on all this, where it's like, you know, you can really kind of study it and look at it and go, okay, well, what's coming out around my thing and what's similar to my thing, and really use that to your advantage. That's if you want to do that kind of stuff. Like some people don't really want to, and you know, and that's great as well. Like it's whatever works for you. But if you are kind of chasing that kind of to get that highest visibility on Amazon, then there is definite ways where you can study things and really make how Amazon work to your advantage.
Yeah, I will also throw out a thing that I've been. So there's a group of us. I'm not going to identify specific authors right now, but like there's a small group that we formed that we wanted to try to like launch novellas and short stories, just to do test launches and kind of see what happens. So that we can learn, all right, when is the stuff that we launch going to be most visible? When is the stuff that we launch going to coincide best with whatever kind of genres we're seeing? And like none of it is perfectly repeatable. But with more than just me doing the research, with like a collective of us who are all just like, you know, reading each other's short stories, being able to track the launch data, and then do it as a test with something that's not as big as a novel, it's been really nice. It's been very helpful to be able to see what seems to work better and what kinds of things we can each kind of learn and grow from. So like having a little cohort like that where we can all sort of like pool our knowledge and be able to see things in much more real time than individually each putting out a novel, that has been excellent. And I can't say that I have any like, you know, great definitive data for this is exactly what to do every step of the way, because it's a small cohort of us and we just started this last summer. But what has been good for like looking at some trends and having like, here's what I'm going to try next time. And so being willing to be flexible on what you try next time based on what worked or didn't work last time, I think is a big part of the game. If you can do that with things that aren't as precious to you as the standalone giant novel, then that can also be helpful.
I like that, because that is that's very unique that you guys are doing that, because you can pull a lot of information from that. And the whole tidbit about releasing in the middle of the month, I did not know that, David, so I'm still
Me either.
So, man. But speaking of CL Cannon, guys, let's see what she's got up on deck for us this week. I know she's always got some great things to share with the Indie Connection. So let's see what books she's got for us this round.
Hey guys, C.L. Cannon here from Fiction Atlas Press, bringing you another Indie Connection. Today I'd like to tell you about some indie books that you might enjoy if you're a fan of Bonesmith by Nikki Paul Preto. The first book I have for you is called Audriel's Heirs by Haley Reese Chow. The brave, burning with fire, harness the dragon's rage. As the dragon heir, 17-year-old Kaia inherited the power of flame to protect her homeland from a godlike necromancer's undead army. But after centuries of peace, the necromancer has faded to myth, and the dragon heir is feared by the people. Persecuted and cast out, Kaia struggles to embrace and control her seemingly useless gift while confined to her family's farm. But when the necromancer's undead terrorize the land once again, Gaither runs away to join the battle. With the help of her childhood rival, the handsome Shadow Heir, and a sneaky cursed cat, Kaia must figure out how to control both her fire and her confidence in time to save Akaria. If she fails, she will sacrifice her family, her new friends, and the enchanting world she has only just begun to see. And time is running out. The second book I have for you is called The Song of the Marked by S.M. Gaither. The old gods are growing restless. An ancient evil is stirring. Can they stop the coming storm? Mercenary Cassia Greythorn cares about two things: completing whatever her latest job is, and earning enough coin to buy the expensive medicine that's keeping her mentor alive. So when the king himself offers her a job, she can't resist the massive reward he offers, even if it means working with Captain Elander, the arrogant, mysterious right hand to that king. Her partner may be infuriating, but at least their mission seems simple and quick enough. Investigate the origins of the strange plague that's been ravaging the Empire, help find a cure, and then call it a day. But in a land brimming with old magic and meddling gods, nothing is ever that simple, and nothing is ever what it seems. As the bodies pile up and strange monsters begin to wreak havoc throughout the realms, Cass and Elander will have to work together to protect their world whether they like it or not. Because one thing is clear: something ancient and evil is stirring in the shadows of that world, and their empire will not survive its full unleashing. The third book I have for you is called Sovereigns of Brighton Shadow by C.E. Page. Nia has spent the 3 years since the purge at Kalana on the run, convinced that if she keeps running, the dark fate that awaits her will spare those she loves. But fate has other ideas. Corruption is a disease with no cure that ends with a rapid descent into madness and violence, and until now it only targeted mages. But an infected warden has shown up challenging everything Margit thought she knew. To understand this recent development, she needs someone who knows possession. She needs Nia, and lucky for Margit, her warden friend Garrett has been ordered to track the rogue necromancer down. From the moment Garrett finds Nia, he is dragged into a deadly game of dark secrets and brutal machinations. A game that spans not only centuries, but the barrier between the known realms. After a revelation that will change the lives of mages and wardens forever, he must learn to trust not only himself, but the enigmatic necromancer, whose fate has become irrevocably tied to his own. Can they find a cure before it's too late? Or will they be swept away by powers beyond any of their control? And the last book I have for you is called The Curse of Broken Shadows by Laura Winter. An assassin, a powerful dagger, and a magic that shouldn't exist. Shadow magic is extinct. The Veil worshippers who honor the Shadow God's wall are hunted for their artifacts, including the Veil shards that break off the wall in Vallacy. Brayla vows to steal it all back. With the dagger of her people and a Veil shard embedded into her collarbone that has infected her with shadow-cursed magic, she is determined to keep her secrets or suffer a fate worse than death. That was a lot easier when the uptight and infuriatingly handsome Captain Kaysen Valkip wasn't hunting her. Kaysen has spent his entire life hiding, from the raids on Vallacy, from his emotions, and from his multiple god-blessed magics that everyone is afraid of. Everyone except Brayla. The chaotic, non-magic-wielding assassin who drives him insane is also the only person who has never looked at his tainted magic without any ounce of fear. Which is why being forced to work with her to discover the source of the breaking wall sets his already uncontrollable fire magic ablaze. With tension growing in the remaining kingdoms and mythical beasts threatening her at every turn, Brayla's secrets might not remain hidden for much longer. To survive, she will have to work with the one man who could burn her. Because if Shadow Hell is released, no one will be safe. Okay, that's all for me this week. I'll see you next week on the Indie Connection. Bye!
Well, those books do sound fascinating. I always add a ton of books to my TBR list whenever I watch the Indie Connection, guys. Like, for real. Oh. So I'm going to take us a little bit to a different topic here. This is for more of kind of yourself personally. As your release strategies have changed and evolved, do you feel like you as the author have also evolved? Let's elaborate on that. Like, what do you think has changed with you as your release strategies have changed?
I mean, for me, I kind of talked about it already. The big thing that changed this time was just being more comfortable, for lack of a better word, getting in people's faces about the book, and making sure people knew about it. I don't have like a massive pre-existing community. I have my little writing community here in Vegas. I have some online people I talk to, but I don't have I can't just put out a book and in a forum and count on hundreds of people buying it. So I really had to step up my salesiness, particularly like the cold outreach, which again was absolutely terrifying. I'm not a salesperson. I don't do it for work. I never have. I've actively avoided it my whole life. And, it had to happen. And I mean, going through all of that, it certainly seemed to help since I managed to it took me like 2 years to get 10 reviews on my first book. And I managed to do that in a few days this time, at least. So I can see the progress and how much better I've gotten. I think that's the biggest thing, is just learning to kind of force myself to go to that uncomfortable place, but like respectfully, still doing my research, still looking at the, TikTokers, the Instagrammers that I think are going to like my work, and not just spamming absolutely everyone. It kind of felt a little bit like querying. I had like my form pitch and, my spreadsheet and everything. And I think it worked out pretty well.
I would also say I think so. But I will note, I don't know how much of the change in me as an author is also just that I'm getting more used to what I'm writing and getting more used to being in front of people. So some of that is just like that's going to be growth that happens whether or not by design. For my part, though, I'm going to mention something that I'm not sure if it's come up in previous Go Indie Nows. I think it has, because I've talked to JD Estrada about this before in Zoom co-working time. That there are times that I feel like what I am writing specifically to what I think my go-to readers are going to read, especially in series, is not necessarily the kind of thing that I would be writing in my ideal world. Like, so the kinds of stuff that really sets my soul on fire, so to speak, as a reader and a writer, is like the super cerebral standalone science fiction where it's like I want to mess with my brain for a while, and I don't know how to market that. So every now and again I'll send myself into one of those kinds of novels, or even some short stories or novellas, and it's more of an exploration for me. But in terms of like writing with release strategies in mind and with knowing what has been more effective so far, I am tailoring more to that. So like when I wrote in the shared universe, when I wrote for Four Horsemen universe, I'm like, cool, I've read these books. I feel like I know what people are expecting. I have an idea of what feels me enough that it links back to my other series, and what feels Four Horsemen enough that it's not going to offend readers. And I'm looking for something that overlaps those well. And so writing to that and feeling like a lot of my initial phrasing on the first and a half draft was pretty close, where it needed like less rework, that was a lot faster. So that skill has gone up. But does that mean that does that give me time eventually get to the thing that I really, really love and want to be able to write more of? I'm not sure. So there's some trade-off in there in terms of like writing to market.
Yeah. All right, AJ, David.
I just kind of go with whatever the muse is telling me to do. So I don't know how much of that is just whatever is up in her brain, or is evolution, so to speak. I kind of write what it's writing. Probably not, but it's how I enjoy my writing, and unfortunately, but was it probably would have different approach. Definitely, and all about me.
I don't know how like I've changed or anything like that with releases or anything. I think the only thing that is probably like a positive one is that I don't like kind of just instantly disbelieve any praise that I get off people that have read my books anymore. I don't well, no, actually that's not true. I internally reject the praise, but I don't do it verbally anymore. I just say thank you. That's nice. I still disbelieve them, but that's pretty much it really. Like I don't know like what I suppose I'm a little bit more relaxed about it. You know, after you kind of have a few out and everything, it's still great. It's amazing to get people reading your books. It's amazing to see them do well and all that. But I think if you're going to do like the indie or the self-published kind of route, like you have to be like pretty much on it and like focused on it. But you kind of have to be relaxed on it as well. Like some days are going to be a lot better than others. Some weeks are going to be a lot better than others. You're going to have some like fallow months, but you're going to have some really bountiful ones as well. So I think you kind of just have to just go with the flow a little bit and keep your eye on what it is you want to achieve, and just keep plugging away at it. And as the cliche says, it's a marathon, not a race. But so I think that's probably all. But as an author, like you evolve and try to get better with each book, and just get better at like at pretending that you believe people when they say that your book is good.
I definitely feel like we have shared a ton of great tips and thoughts on how things change. And now we are going to get ready to have some fun. So let me shift things around here before we get ready for the 5-minute drill, guys. And just bear with me because I have to pull up. I don't know what this. Let me trade spots with you, Mike.
It got really big for a second, so I was like, I feel self-conscious and just like pop Lutra in front. We'll just make Lutra there.
There you go. Yes. Okay, let me share screen here. Joe is much more like efficient at this than I am. So, okay. I gotta get back over here. Okay. Oh, I don't like this layout. What other layouts are there? What does this one do? Oh, that one. Nope. Okay. We're just gonna go with this. Well, but then it kind of doesn't show the top of it. Oh gosh. We're gonna figure this out, and that just took it away. Okay. We're sticking with this, guys. Gonna make it work. Okay, so just some quick like rules on the 5-minute drill. I know I briefly kind of explained it in the chat, but for those of you watching that's never seen this done before, we're gonna go around. We'll start the timer. There's 10 different questions, and you have to answer them to your best of ability. So we have to have an answer for every question that I ask for us to kind of get in the top running against the other shows, because we're working as a group here to get the most points of questions answered in the fastest amount of time, or well, without getting to the 5 minutes. We got to beat the first show. I think they've got the title holder right now, isn't that right, David? You were on it, so.
I don't know. To be honest.
All right, David, you're trying to beat yourself.
Yes,
that's what I do.
You gotta beat your personal best time on that. But yeah, so I'm going to pull up the timer. Let me get it started, and we will start the first question. And the first question is, can you name one section of the spine? We can start up here with Mike and work our way from him to David to Sarah to AJ. So go.
You said the spine, like human spines, like
yep,
the
thoracic human
vertebrae.
Spine.
Thoracic vertebrae.
Okay, David.
Vertebrae.
Sarah.
The lumbar region.
Yeah, there you go.
Sacral.
Yeah. All right, guys. Question 2. Favorite non-American cuisine, and we're gonna go in reverse, starting with AJ all the way back to the top, Mike. So AJ,
quesadillas.
Pad Thai.
Yeah.
Pasta.
Pad Thai.
Nice, David. And then Mike.
Lebanese.
All right. Can you give me a type of event, question 3, that uses horses? And for this, you cannot repeat the persons in front of you. Start with Mike. A type of event that uses horses.
I mean, like those horse jumping shows. Is there an
There
official
you go.
name? There's an official name. Horse jumping shows.
Horse jumping, yes.
Jousting.
Yep.
Dressage.
There you go.
Equestrian.
There you go. You guys, I'm a little impressed with that because I thought that was going to be more challenging than that. Question 4. What is your go-to sugary beverage? Starting down here with AJ.
Frappe.
Nice.
Chai latte.
Nice.
Coke Zero.
Powerade.
Nice. Okay. Although I don't know if Coke Zero would count because isn't that zero sugar, David?
I think there is some sugar in it, actually, still.
Number 5. What is your favorite American holiday?
Ooh. I'm gonna go with Christmas.
Nice.
Black Friday, I guess.
It's a holiday, technically. Sarah.
Halloween. I've got bats and skulls behind me, no question.
Labor Day.
Nice. Okay. And number 6. Give me one forest-dwelling animal.
Wolf.
Fox.
Owl.
Chipmunk.
Nice. Good job, guys. Okay. This is for 7. What is a favorite book or series from your childhood?
Favorite book or series from my childhood? Animorphs.
Lord of the Rings.
Of course, David.
Fear
Sarah?
Street. Fear Street. R.L. Stein.
Oh, yes.
Mercedes Lackey Valdemar series.
Nice job, guys. Okay. Number 8. What is a flavor of candy you like?
Chocolate.
Caramel.
Banana.
Toffee.
Still got 2 minutes, guys. We're doing good. Okay. Question number 9. Name one fantasy creature that you like.
Dragon.
Elf.
Nightmare. Of course.
Shifter.
Nice. Good job, guys. And the final question. If you could learn one new skill, what would it be?
Riding faster.
Ghost hunting.
Teleportation.
Piano.
Nice. All right, guys. We got all 10.
Oh, I thought we were talking about real skills. Of course,
She
teleportation.
didn't say that. Any skill.
No, she didn't. She didn't. That was me. That was me.
Did not technically specify. So,
Said
but I did
any.
make them more challenging. We made good time on that, guys. So let me stop.
Look, I'm just
sharing
saying that
now.
if someone says if you can't learn any new skill and someone doesn't think teleportation, then you're lying.
Teleportation would be.
I would be
awesome
really
skill.
scared of like having a skill that like having a totally new science fiction-y superhero skill. I would be so scared of using it wrong and destroying something in the process.
Look, I would use teleportation so much to get out of so many things. It would be amazing.
And you can travel a lot easier. You could get from one place to another place, with teleportation a lot easier. I have to say.
I just keep teleporting home whenever I needed to. Someone asked
That's
me a
true.
question I didn't want to answer. I just teleport out of there and go home. Be great.
I don't know. The functionality of teleportation, there's a lot of questions about whether or not you're going to destroy your soul by using it the first time. And then you're
I
just
don't have
cloning
a
yourself.
soul.
Oh, well then. Forget
I mean,
it.
like
You're
also just
fine.
from a physics perspective, I don't know what the energy is that's fueling this or where the matter or energy goes in between time. Like these are the things like this. It would give me too much anxiety. I would not be able to do it.
Although, if you're learning it, maybe like the theory behind it is like core level 1, and then you actually get to do it. So
Right.
it's not
Yeah.
specified.
Well, that's the Star Trek thing, isn't it? About like how they break you down and rebuild you, and it's like you still have your same thoughts and memories, but are you the same
Well, as
person?
long as you are in the pattern buffer somewhere, you're fine, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, we are coming up on the end of our time. So let's go around. We're going to start with Sarah and work in reverse. Actually, no, we're going to reverse it because we went the other way to start. So we're going to start with David this time. I'm sorry, guys. We're going to start with David and tell our listeners and viewers where they can follow you, find your books. Yeah. So take away,
Yeah,
David.
so you can either come to Galway and Ireland and see me in person if you really want to. If you ask around, you'll probably find my house. It's not very big. And otherwise, you can go to my website, davidgreenwriter.com, and all of my stuff and all my books and everything like that is on there. And also, I host the Green Room on Go Indie now. So yes, I always forget to mention that.
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned that because I've got to tell everybody about what's coming up this week. AJ?
I'm AJ Mullican. You can find me at ajmullican.com. I made it really easy for you. My links are there at ajmullican.com/author. My books are there. You can buy, you can order signed paperbacks. You can get links to Amazon, whatever you need.
Yeah. Mike?
I'm Mike Jack Stoumbos. This is Lucha the Parrot. You can find me at mikejackstoumbos.com. We also have an active Kickstarter for the sequel to Murder Birds. We have Murder Bugs and also the Vampire Survival Guide. And then otherwise, I am in the Virginia area. So DC through Atlanta conventions, usually sci-fi conventions. With this series, is flying through. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Sarah.
Hi. Okay, so you can find me. All my stuff is on Amazon, but all the extra stuff that isn't books, you can find me at my website, sgtosh.com. Like I said, I just had a book, first in series, come out, Paranormal Suspense, Death by Misadventure. That is available now. Book 2 will be out in April. Book 3 will be out next fall. So you can go look at that. I am in the Vegas area, as I said. So if you're by, I'm around. Look me up, come see me. I chair the Sin City Writers Group here. So if you want to come by and meet some other writers in town, look us up. That's also on my website. And then actually I will be appearing on the Green Room in a couple of weeks with another Vegas writer, Wayne Trammell, who I'm hopefully going to destroy. So that'll be fun.
That is going to be an interesting episode because Wayne is a hoot. So,
yes.
All right, guys, I'm Madeline Jail, the chapter goddess. You have found us on Go Indie now. If you have joined us since we started, hit the like button and subscribe. Send us stars if you are watching this on Facebook. Show us some love. I am a fantasy mixed genre author. You can check out all of my stuff, short stories included on my website, thechaptergoddess.com, where I've also got some services for other authors available, author coaching, some proofreading, editing. Yeah, it's kind of slowly expanding. Freelance writing, ghostwriting, and also check out my blog. But before we go, I am going to mention this week we've got a huge lineup of stuff here on Go Indie Now. Monday night, as David mentioned, he's going to be, oh, no, I'm wrong. Monday night, it's 21 Grams, the season 4 premiere block. And David is actually the guest, so he's going to be doing some fun stuff on there. Tuesday night, the series premiere of Zero Means You're Dead with SM Hillman. And this is our new thing all about indie gaming. Wednesday night, I've got a new episode of Character Driven dropping where you will get to peek into the mysterious world of paranormal detective Paige Papillion, and it's going to be a fun, like the book series is awesome. It's a fun episode. Friday night is the season finale of Spotlight on the Multiverse. You'll get to spend an hour with Vanessa Gunta, who is pretty much leading Multiverse this year. And then Sunday, you'll be back here again with us for another episode of This Week in Indie. So once again, guys, have a great week. And remember that it is all the time to go indie now.